All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another special episode of Black Desert. So, I wanted to make this video because a lot of people have asked for this. It's kind of like a Dark Knight diary, I guess. And it's not really a guide, but I just wanted to talk about it in terms of, like, if you're thinking about playing Dark Knight or re-rolling to it or tagging it, whether you have gear or not, I just want to point out some, notable things like skills, add-ons, skill enhancements or bombs and everything else, how to build it. So general tips on how to go about Dark Knight. I think that if I were to make a tier list, those are very take those, any tier list you see, take those with a grain of salt because there's just too many factors. That's why I don't do it. But I think Dark Knight is straight down the middle of what I think a balanced class would be. We all know the super OP classes in this game, and we all know the ones that really need to get buffed up. And I think Dark Knight is just straight up balanced, because one thing I look at is whether you play Succession or Awakening. I think both options are actually very good choices, and compared to other classes where one option is a lot better than the other, I don't think you can go wrong whether you play Succession or Awakening. And the one way I can actually look at this in game is, I know this is technically kind of on the PvE side, but if you go to your Black Shrine and you just look at all the bosses on whatever the highest difficulty, and then you see what people are playing, there's actually a good balance, and along with the Arena of Solaire. So if you do enjoy PvPing, that is also a good way to check what people do. So if you were to look at the Arena of Solaire, and then you look at Dark Knight, where is it? You could actually see, well, actually Succession just straight up better in PvP. I already knew that, but for PvE, Awakening is nicer. But either way, I don't think there's a right or wrong choice for what you do. I guess it depends on what you do overall. But anyway, with that said, I wanted to talk about all the skills, my builds, and notable things you should look out for. And yeah, let's start out with Awakening and the skill add-ons. So this is what I use. This is my general PvE, because this is just what I use for most things. And one thing I would swap out is if you don't need double crit damage, or you're actually on top of your buffs, you could swap that for anything else, like a down attack if you grind a spot that needs it. Or if you don't like Dark Nebula in general, you could just swap that out for Seed of Catastrophe or the Trap thingy, and it's also fine. So skill enhancement or Rabomb skills. Rabomb is what they used to be called back in the day before skill enhancement, so that's how you kind of know if someone is an OG player. If you say Rabomb and they just know what it is by default, it's this, by the way. So Shadow Strike is something I use to pull enemies. It's more of a PvE thing. None of these skills are really good for damage. I see them more as a utility, as in you use them for buffs and debuffs, or you'd pull an enemy or something filler for cooldown. So Shadow Strike is a lot better than the Wrath of Vidir in Awakening, because it allows you to pull things easier without using your fat range skills. And so I just think it's overall better. Even probably in Succession, I would still use this as well. The 57, Unveiled Fate over Obsidian Blaze. The reasoning why is you get the 15 minus DP on the enemies. And you get an attack speed 10%. This is one thing you do want to actually try to keep up and use on cooldown. So it is an 18-second cooldown, but I think it's actually pretty good. Whereas Obsidian Blaze is just damage, which you don't really need. So I value the debuff and the buff on you more than the irrelevant damage over here. And then Balance Strike is, I don't know, both of these are not really that great. It just which one has more protections on it than doesn't. So this one has more. I don't really use this skill. You kind of just have to keep it on your bar, because that's the only way to use it. But it's one of those things where if you use all your other skills and you have this on cooldown, you use it. But with Awakening, you have so many skills that it's not going to be an issue. So anyway, let's talk about awakening skills. I want to go through these very briefly and talk about like the skills that are relevant. So nowadays in 2024, it's actually very easy to max out the amount of skill points you need. So back in the day, you would need around like 2,000 skill points, maybe like 1,700 to get all the relevant skills. Nowadays, like today, I guess you would say if you were to start today, you need about like 1,250 skill points to get like everything in the main hand and your awakening. So yeah, very easy to do on seasonals, and you can do it in like one day. So anyway, things you should get. Your E buff is just huge buff, always good. Spirit Hunt is going to be one of your openers, followed by Shattering and Seed and the Flows. These are your main abilities as Awakening. And then Spirit Legacy, of course, is big damage. So I guess here's how I would categorize skills in like someone who's never played Dark Knight before. So we're going to say things as like light, medium, and heavy attacks. Light meaning you use them more often and they do less damage, whereas heavy attacks mean like they do big damage but they're on cooldown a lot, so you kind of use them in situations, right? Okay, so Spirit Hunt is one of those things that's a light, it's a more or less transitional ability and swap from non-awakening to awakening. And of course it's just like if you have an add-on like we do over here, you get your buffs up, and then you start firing off your big damage. Shattering and Seed, I would consider more of a medium because they are both on a 7-second cooldown. So I think about a year ago, they changed Awakening... not even a year ago, but a few months ago. They changed Awakening DK to make things line up on cooldowns, which is why, for PvE in particular, Awakening is significantly better than Succession in most places. So yeah, these are, I would consider mediums. They line up with your timers and they both have 7s with the flow. So back in the day, they used to be a little bit off, like the Seed would cost more and or have a longer cooldown, but now they're the same, to the point where like before it would be Shattering followed by Seed. Nowadays I don't think it really matters as much. I guess it's just muscle memory if you've been doing it for so long. And then Spirit Legacy also have a 7-second cooldown. I would consider this more of a heavy attack, even though it's on the same timer. Just because, like, Spirit Legacy is one of the skills you can spam. Oh, I just dropped 100. Like, this is one of the skills you can spam infinitely, but you should not be doing it because the big damage comes from when it's not on cooldown. But if you use it while it's on cooldown as well, it does less damage. So if you're grinding like very low end enemies, you could just probably spam it infinitely and it'll be fine. But you shouldn't be doing that just because you're getting less effectiveness out of it. Trap of Vadir is more of an evasion ability. When I say evasion, I mean like you're getting out of situations, not like evasion like the stat. So like you use this to get out of situations. I know some people that have add-ons in PvP. I actually think I have PvP add-ons that I'll show you maybe later. But this is your movement ability to get out of things. Soul Snatch is one of those filler flows that like you use, like, I don't know, let's say Dark Nebula, and then you use that, and this is the Soul Snatch. Twilight Dash is going to be one of your main mobility things, and it gets you out of situations more than anything. So how you use it is, I guess, depending on what you're doing. So PvP, I guess, depends on, you could use it as a finisher, as in like the enemies at like 1%, you dash through them, you'll finish them off, good. Or you can use it to get out of situations. If you're using it for PvE, you can dash through things because you know you won't die. PvP is a different situation because you'll probably just get grabbed out of it, and that's not good. So Cluster is actually a very good skill. So yeah, you can combo it with a lot of things. It's one of those things that you're gonna probably have to take a little bit of time to understand. So like you use it and then it's a flow more or less because it goes instantly. So let's say I use this one and then I just clustered with all those like daggers or something out of nowhere. But if you use cluster normally, it looks like that. You see the animation where it was like you raised your arm, that was an extra second. You want to make sure to flow it so it's instant. Grip of Grudge is something I actually used to like pull enemies. It looks like that. It actually got buffed a while ago, and it used to be such a terrible skill to the point where it wasn't worth using. Nowadays, they increased the range of it, and well, I mean, the damage still isn't really that good. It's just kind of like it flows with a lot of things, and it's smoother and cleaner, and it goes a lot faster, which I think is good. Dark Nebula is a pull, and it actually looks really cool, but it also pulls you towards things, so just keep that in mind, the situational. And so as for your core skills, I actually think there are probably 3 good options. So this is the one I would recommend for most people because it just adds a super armor when you're firing off your Seed of Catastrophe. So this is how it would work. Like, let's say you do this, right? And then you follow it up with your Seed. Now you have super armor while you're using it. So whether you're learning or you just want to play a more defensive style, I think the core's Seed of Catastrophe is really good. For more advanced players and people who are doing very specific stuff, like let's say boss splits or, you know, certain PvE things, I think Shattering and Spirit Hunt are also very good options. So Stiffness and Stiffness on here, these are both very used skills as well. They're more offensive, whereas the Seed of Catastrophe is just more a defensive, protected style. So I think either one, no matter what you do, it's a good option. Just one of these 3 skills. Spirit Legacy, I don't particularly think stuns are that useful, because if you're gonna do it, you might as well just do something else and have a protection, but it's up to you. I just think for most people, whether you're fighting against or with a Dark Knight, most people are gonna have the Seed of Catastrophe unless they're very specifically doing something. So yeah, that's Awakening. Main hand skills, whether you're playing Succession or Awakening, these are going to be your used skills. Airstrike, very high mobility. Slanted Balance, I don't see it as much used in Awakening. You still do, but not as much because like your ranged attacks mostly cover a lot of things. But in Succession, this has a further radius, I believe, and so you would use this to pull instead of certain other ones that Awakening has. Absolute Enforcement and all the flows with it, very strong skill. Maybe less so in Awakening, but if you are a Succession, these are very important. Comma Slash, very good. Wheel of Fortune is actually something that has a different radius, whether you're Awakening or Succession. So let me show you. This is Awakening Wheel of Fortune. It looks like that. Small circle, right? Now, I'm going to use the Unveiled Fate, which is basically the same thing. So this is what a Succession radius looks like. Plus, you get to put the debuff on them. So you saw how the circle is bigger. If you play Succession, your normal Wheel of Fortune, that's the large circle. And then Obsidian Ashes is actually an ability that you would use to pull things as well. But in Awakening, you also get your, what is that skill called? Shadow Strike as well. So this one, you would pull enemies from further distances. And so you get 2 of them, and everything groups up very cleanly, and you're good. Corrupt Ground. I think people use Corrupt Ground as more of a emergency heal. So like if you get bursted, you just hit your Corrupt Ground and you're good. And then Lunacy of Vidir is more important in Succession. So Blooming Black Rose is the Magnus ability that we get. So back in the day, it used to be kind of bad and it doesn't really fit in skills. And then they changed it. And now you should be using it. But here's the thing. You can use this as a filler or like a flow in a few different skills. But some of the flows you do it with are kind of clunky to the point where you might want to test all of them and see what fits in your playstyle. So like for me, I would use Unveiled Fate in here. And it would look like this. Let me see. Like this into the Blooming Rose. That's what it looks like. And that looked pretty smooth, right? So let's say I used another ability, like, I don't know, something else into like, this is what it looks like normally by default. You saw how that animation took like an extra 1-2 seconds. That's actually a lot. So you saw how you took the second and then you do this one and then instant. So make sure to figure out what skills would work for you with the blooming black rose, because it could feel clunky or it could feel as clean as you want it to be. And yeah, that's about it. So your movements are basically your dusk and the smoky haze to like, this is what it looks like. To, if you are a Dark Knight player, this is what it looks like. To other people, it looks like you're just zooming and invisible, which is one of those things. So Nocturne is one of those abilities where you just go invisible and then you hit a directional. This might be a hot take, but I still don't think that like you going invisible is very hard to track in video games, especially with like lag and desync and everything, especially in this game. I think they should have some sort of tracker. So if you want to have the immersion of going invisible, that's cool. But like, you know how when you go V, you see this? Other people can't see this. I think this should be visible. If you go have any ability that goes invisible, that goes for all classes as well, especially you ninjas and kunos. But you know, the reason why people use V's obviously is an emergency escape from whatever. So if you get grabbed, you V and you're good. But I still think it should be tracked. Like the enemy should be able to see where you're moving, but the effect still stays like you're using it to get out of a CC or something. But I don't know. Maybe that's just a hot take or that's just me. But I think any invisible skills, you should be able to see it. You're still getting away, but it's trackable. Aside from that, basically everything else, just get it when you can. As we all know, Dark Knight is a DR class. And what that means is DR and evasion in terms of skill builds. How do you know which one you are? You look at your passive abilities on your class. Every class has them. You look under passives. And does your passives give evasion? If yes, then you are an evasion class. If no, you are DR. Obviously, some classes like Striker and Mystic can go both ways just because of their passives are a little bit different. And they're just tankier in general. So whether you go evasion or DR generally is dependent by your passives, but some classes have different ones. So yeah, I've actually tried both evasion and DR on DK, and DR is the way to go. It is what it is, because we don't have evasion. It's what it is. So I guess we'll talk about light stones and artifacts that I use. For a video, I actually have something. I'll leave it in the description. So it's going to be called like My Crystal Setup V version 5 or something. We talked about every single one of these. So if you want to check that out, it's more in detail, and I'll leave a link in the description so I just don't talk about it twice and it'll take less time. You just watch that if you're interested. Artifacts is something I do change pretty regularly. So one set right now is I have the all-out attack. I would consider this more of an endgame setup. It's like very high damage, but you do lose 15 DR and 25 evasion. So just keep that in mind if you're grinding like those very super scary spots, high-end areas. Yeah, you are trading off defenses for big damage. So glass cannon, essentially. If I didn't have 2 strike crystals, what would I do? This is something I'm actually working on right now. So I'm waiting for a 4th Kabua's artifact. Well, I actually just put an order on it. But whenever I get a 4th one, it's going to be like I think it's called the wild, or basically species damage. And it's going to be like 3 of like demi-human or Kama-Sylvians and then an iridescent. So is that one better? I think they're like mostly the same on average, but one doesn't obviously take like the defensives off. So I don't know. There's a lot of math involved. I could explain it, but it would actually take a long time. And and it probably still wouldn't even make sense. Like, the modifiers for species damage and AP is not exactly 1-to-1. It's like 0.07 to 1 versus AP is 1. So the math over an average time is a little bit wonky. But either way, for most things, I think all-out attack is generally the way to go. For beginners and entry-level players, I think Death Blow is not as expensive, but getting the blades are kinda. So here's what I would do if you are a very new beginner and you're thinking about getting artifacts. Here's what I would do. First of all, if you don't know what class or like what kind of damage you do, you look at your stat sheet right here, and it'll tell you like your combat type. So obviously Dark Knights are magic, warriors are melee, archers are ranged, wizards and witches are magic. So believe it or not, I've actually had to explain that to some people. And if you didn't know that archers are ranged, rangers, and magic, if it didn't make sense, well, just look at your combat type. So, anyway, with that said, entry level, here's what I would do. Just get like whatever AP. So if you're magic, you get magic AP. If you are melee ranged, get that AP. Or if you're just doing PvE, extra damage against monsters is always just good. So overall, it's very easy. Just get the ones that you think are good, and then if you just stack extra AP against monsters, literally you can't go wrong with that one. And then once you get to the higher end and more like high budget options, that's when you start like picking out specific things. But yeah, until then, as long as you aren't choosing something with a downside to it, all-out attack is a like glass cannon one, admittedly, but just as long as you're doing something that gives you more stats, you're doing fine. And then Death Blow is definitely a good one, and is basically more crit rate and more damage against monsters. Always nice to have. And then everything else is life skills, and this is my defensive set. I personally use this as like a more of a test thingy. Not really anything meta, but it's the untouchable. More DR, HP, special evasion. Evasion itself doesn't really affect me, but it just comes with the set, so it is what it is. And then for, like, if I'm grinding spots where I know I don't need as much damage, or I'm just on a training dummy, I'll just use straight up combat XP, and that's my add-ons. But in terms of build, yeah, DR, as in, like, you're going to be going Urgon's, Begs, like, Griffin, and everything else is pretty self-explanatory. So as we all know, Dark Knight is more of a glass cannon, assassin type class, where you're not usually the main damage in war. You would be the person on the side picking the stragglers off kind of thing. You're not like in the main group in a PvP situation. So expect to be doing a lot of like small scale fights, like 1v1s or like 1v2s and whatnot. That's where your class shines. And so having a little bit of defensive is always nice. But for the most part, just know by default, the Dark Knights are assassins and glass cannon classes. So building all AP is not a bad option. Evasion doesn't really work out as well, but admittedly, having some like defensive stats is always nice. For example, in your cups, I have the HP ones and the all damage reduction instead of the yellow cups that give you like more AP and stuff. So yeah, if you do PvP, I think that defensive cups are generally nicer. If you're PvE only, the yellow ones are fine. There's no right or wrong answer to what you pick. I just think that I like survivability. If you're dead, you're doing no damage. So I just think of it that way. So yeah, with that said, PvPers, we actually do use Nuver because we are DR. Mercenaries. Oh, I should probably sign up for that. But anyway, if you're PvPing, you should have a Nuver. If you're PvEing, Kudum or Blackstar. The difference is very minimal at max level, so like Pen versus Kudum cap is 20. And so, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Well, it is one thing. You're going to have to get to Nuva for PvP. It is what it is. You just get it. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I'll leave a link in the description to my crystal setup, and you can watch that because it's like a 15-20 minute video, and I go over everything and I talk about why I use it. Artifacts we just covered, and just all the skills and relevant stuff. I think for Succession, let's talk about the main skills real quick. So Succession is you're only using your main skills. So Unveiled is very nice to have. Airstrike, Slanted. Your main like spammable ability is probably going to be your Ravage Rake, just because it's like slashing multiple times but with big damage. Enforcement is a lot of damage. Comma Slash is also good. Wheel of Fortune, very good. Same with Lunacy and all of that. As for PvP, these are all optional. I think more classes these days are magic damage or ranged. So just pick the one that you think would be good for you. So magic DP, generally pretty nice. So up to you. If you do Node Wars, this is what I have. And I think that's about it. So with that said, hope you enjoyed my Dark Knight Diary. I don't think it's a guide at all because I didn't really show anything important. I just gave you the basics of what I think are good and how you should go about doing stuff. So with that said, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you come back. Hope you have a fantastic day. I make guides for beginners, returning players, and people who are just looking to get better at this game. So I've been playing this game for almost 8 years now. I didn't have any guides to help me when I first started. I just wanted to pass out my knowledge to all of you guys. So hopefully it helped, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.